Welcome to this latest news video for Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. And once again, there's a lot going on in the news today. And today we're going to talk about Stellantis. There are two big news stories that just came out. The first is that Stellantis announced a new partnership with Jaguar. The second is even more interesting, because at a time when most European manufacturers are trying to slow down the arrival of Chinese brands, Stellantis has just betrayed everyone by announcing that it will produce Chinese brand cars in France. We'll talk about it in detail, and we'll also talk about Mercedes, which has just unveiled its first all-electric AMG. Not only is it terribly expensive, but it's just plain ugly. And finally, we'll talk about Skoda, which is announcing new combustion engines for its large sedans. I hope you'll be interested in these topics in this video. If that's the case, I'm counting on you to show your support as usual by supporting my channel for free. You can do that by leaving a like on this video and subscribing for the next ones. Of course, boost this one if the option appears for you. That's really the most important thing if you want to give it more visibility to my channel and my videos, and of course, also by leaving a little comment where you share your opinion about today's news. Indeed, we're going to start with some big news from Stellantis, with, for example, a new partnership that has just been announced with the Jaguar Land Rover Group. I have to admit, that wasn't on my 2026 bingo card. I really didn't expect it at all. For now, we don't know all the details about this partnership. We're likely to find out a lot more tomorrow, May 21st, since that's the day Stellantis will announce its major strategic plan to finally get back on track. In the meantime, there are still two things that seem to be at the center of this partnership. The first is the sharing of platforms, especially the fully electric platforms from Jaguar Land Rover, which Stellantis would like to reuse as the basis for its SUVs, particularly those with a premium feel. To differentiate them from the standard Peugeot 3008 or even the Citroën C5 Aircross, this would let Jaguar Land Rover make its platforms profitable, especially the EMA platform for future electric Velar and Defender models, which will be sold in limited volumes. So this allows JLR to find a new way to get a return on its investment in developing its platforms, and it also benefits Stellantis, which won't have to invest several hundred million euros to develop its own platforms. The second key aspect of this partnership mainly involves the United States. Jaguar Land Rover might be able to use some of Stellantis Group's factories to directly produce some of its SUVs there and sell them in the United States. Without these vehicles being heavily penalized by American taxes on cars made in Europe, that's something that really hurt Jaguar Land Rover in 2025, causing them to lose a lot of money, because until now they only had European factories, and because it's too small a brand in terms of sales volume for it to be profitable to build a factory from scratch in the United States. So that's more about the American side of Stellantis. As for Europe, there's also quite a bit of news since we've just learned that Stellantis will be producing Chinese brand cars in France. And yes, at a time when most European manufacturers are trying to slow down the arrival of Chinese brands that are gradually coming in and taking more and more market share, Stellantis has decided to let the wolf into the sheepfold for the second time. I say that because this is the second time Stellantis has been distributing the Li Motor brand in Europe for months and has announced another partnership with them. Since some Opel brand vehicles, which will be sold in Europe in a few months, will be developed by Li Motor and will be equipped with Li Motor technologies, especially the batteries and electric motors. So that was the first betrayal. The second is that Stellantis announced that in France, at the La Genèse factory, which until now has only produced one model, the Citroën C5 Aircross, they will now produce two models of the Chinese brand Dongfeng. So it's true that on paper, it's a deal that suits everyone a bit because this factory, which until now relied on a single model, was at risk of closing the day that model was no longer sold. So this makes it possible to keep some of the industrial activities on site and to secure some of the jobs. And on the other hand, it allows Dongfeng to directly produce models on European soil that it can sell in Europe without having to pay the tax on cars made in China, and without needing to build factories directly in Europe, which takes a lot of time and money. Here, it would reuse what already exists. And in addition, this agreement will allow Stellantis to strengthen its ties with Dongfeng, since Stellantis is trying to make its comeback in China through the Peugeot brands, notably with agreements in China with Dongfeng. Again, to share factories. Peugeot wants to use Dongfeng's Chinese factories to build Peugeots that it will sell in China. So here it's a give and take. It's simply returning the favor. We don't yet know in detail the list of vehicles that could be manufactured by Dongfeng in France. There are at least two SUVs that are virtually confirmed. The Voya Courage, which is a 4.7-meter electric SUV, is quite high-end and is intended to compete with vehicles like the BMW iX3, for example, and the Voya Free, which is bigger, also an SUV that would target models like the XC90. So, at first glance, there's no direct competition for Stellantis. We're not talking here about producing a Chinese model that would end up taking market share from Citroën, Peugeot, or even Fiat. The only brand that could potentially be bothered by these models is DS. But anyway, DS doesn't need anyone or any competition to sabotage itself. By the way, speaking of sabotage, we really need to talk about Mercedes because they just revealed something to us. It's called the Mercedes-AMG GT. And of course, I'll let you use the comment section to tell me what you think of its design, but personally, I find it extremely ugly. Whether it's the proportions or the car's different angles, I just don't find it appealing. It's clear that the Mercedes isn't subtle at all since we're talking about a gigantic model, almost 6 meters long, almost 2 meters wide, a wheelbase of 3 meters and 2,500 kilos. But Mercedes guarantees that this won't be a problem thanks to the Sport Air suspension system, which is supposed to prevent this giant from rolling too much in corners. You'll see for yourself how air suspensions age at Mercedes. It's not exactly a total success, especially given the ongoing tech overload. You'll also find interconnected hydraulic shock absorbers that replace traditional anti-roll bars, rear-wheel steering, and inside, once again, Mercedes really went all out. I think they used every leftover screen because there are screens everywhere. There's an 11-inch screen for the driver, a 14-inch central screen, a 14-inch passenger screen, but also screens on the doors and on the ceiling. This is not a joke. You can display different patterns. As for the powertrain, it will be available in 2 different versions. The GT55 version will only produce 816 horsepower, and the GT63 version will produce up to 1,170 horsepower with a 0 to 100 km/h time of 2.4 seconds, and a top speed of around 300 km/h. The energy will be provided by a 106 kilowatt-hour battery. It's a big battery, and that's one of the reasons why this car is so heavy. The maximum announced range is 700 km WLTP. And thanks to the 800-volt architecture, Mercedes claims a fast charging power that exceeds 600 kilowatts. They talk a lot about this, explaining that it will only take 10 minutes to recover about 450 kilometers of range, forgetting to mention that in Europe, most fast chargers are 150 kilowatt-hours, and it's already quite difficult to find 350 kilowatt-hour ones. Not only does it take the GT55 and GT63 names from the old AMG models with combustion engines, since 55 and 63 used to represent the displacement of the old V8S, it also steals their sound, since the car will play a fake V8 sound inside the vehicle and will also simulate gear shifts. There will be completely artificial vibrations transmitted through the seats. All of this comes at a price, since the entry-level model will be around 170,000 euros. So, let me tell you, it's still going to be pretty tough for Mercedes-AMG to sell this electric AMG GT. Because, first of all, as the head of Mercedes-AMG reminded us, the customers who come to buy an AMG are looking for the V8. And secondly, for 60,000 euros less, you can buy a BYD Denza Z9 GT, which is just as powerful, has more range, and supports charging speeds that can go up to over 1,000 kilowatts. It's also worth remembering that a few days ago, the head of Mercedes explained that every model sold by the brand must have a business case, meaning a targeted typical buyer. You still have to wonder, when you see this, who the typical target buyer for this kind of car is. Because it's not classy, and it's not particularly high-performing compared to other electric cars. At the same time, it's too big to be used comfortably in the city, but also doesn't have enough range to really be a true highway car. It's too heavy to be a sports car or a track car. And it's not prestigious enough for the traditional Mercedes-AMG buyer who wants their V8. All of this comes in a rather vulgar and not very graceful package, honestly. Has Mercedes lost all sense? It's up to you to tell me what you think in the comments. Meanwhile, there's a brand that hasn't lost its mind at all and is actually perfectly reasonable. Skoda, which has just announced the arrival of new plug-in hybrid powertrains for its large road sedan, the Octavia. Quite surprisingly, this car was offered as a plug-in hybrid until 2024, but this engine had disappeared for about a year and a half. There were only combustion-only versions left, like the diesel version with 116 or 150 horsepower, or the 116 horsepower gas version, and the mild hybrid versions with 116 and 150 horsepower. 2 years later, the plug-in hybrid is back. The Octavia should come with a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder TSI engine from Volkswagen, combined with an electric motor integrated into the transmission. The whole system will be powered by a 19 kilowatt-hour battery, which should allow it to have about 120 kilometers of range in fully electric mode. There should be 2 power levels offered, namely 204 or 272 horsepower. And the good news doesn't stop there. Skoda has also confirmed that the Octavia will get a traditional hybrid version, like Toyota's hybrid, which should be based on the same engine. The 1.5 TSI 4-cylinder gas engine would be paired with an electric motor that's slightly smaller than the hybrid versions. Plug-in with a smaller battery as well, allowing it to run fully electric at low speeds. There you go. That's a wrap for today's news. There's a lot of news. The schedule is busy. and I hope you liked the video. If that's the case, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for future videos, and possibly supporting through the join button below this one. Thanks to everyone who checks this out. See you soon for the next one. Bye.